We have had a temperature drop. Oh boy, it's not that it wasn't predicted because we knew that it was coming, but yikes, talk about that roller coaster for this month. One day it feels like summer, the next day it feels like, well, deep fall. I wouldn't say really winter. We had temperatures in the 40s last night. That's happening again tonight. Oh boy. So today we're gonna walk around and check out my more tender plants, see how they did with the temperature drop because I did not do anything to them to protect them from it. So we're going to check them out. We're going to talk about cold tolerances, what plants can take, what they can't take, all of that kind of good stuff. Hi, you guys. This is Nicole from My Carolina Garden. My garden is located in growing zone 8B in southeastern North Carolina. If you haven't already subscribed to My Carolina Garden, I would like to invite you to do that now, just to ensure that my videos continue to show up in your feed. I have not always been so wimpy when it has come to the cold. I actually moved to the Carolinas 10 years ago from the Northeast, and in large part that was because we wanted to be in a warmer climate. And now when the temperatures drop, boy, you feel it so much more than you ever did before. So let's start talking about some tender plants and how they're feeling out with a temperature drop that suddenly goes to the 40s when we haven't seen the 40s probably since our winter time, maybe back in February. So we're going to start here next to the oleander. Now the oleander can actually tolerate temperatures 15 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So it actually is a little more tolerant than some of the other things we might see today. This plant is hardy zones 8 to 10. So you can see we have lots and lots of blooms on it. Certainly no damage from the temperature last night. Now, as I said, we will drop again tonight into the 40s as well, but it's really a lot of the prolonged temperature drops that are going to affect our especially tender tropical style plants. So let's see what else we have and how else are things made out overnight. Right over here, I have a couple of things that I want to talk about, and the first one is the Mandavilla. Now, we talk about my waterfall a lot. I have mentioned that I would need to overwinter the Mandavilla indoors in the greenhouse, and I am going to dig those up and bring them inside. But for a temperature drop last night, like in the 40s, I didn't do any protection whatsoever. It just didn't feel like it was necessary because, again, it's the prolonged exposure to a temperature drop like that that would be a problem for these guys. Certainly you have plants that are outliers. You might have a Mandavilla that is doing okay for you below 40 degrees, but that is not typical. So that's what we're talking about today. What would be typical? So Mandavilla really does not want temperatures below 45 to 50 degrees. They are a zone 9 to 11 plant. And again, as I'm in a zone 8, it's not something that I would even try to keep outside. I don't want to damage it because I love it and I love it in this place. So I will put it back in here next year. Now, right behind me, you see I have the Bengal Tiger Canna Lilies. Now, these Canna Lilies are hardy to zone 7. So again, we have the same sort of a situation here. If we had a frost situation, this plant would be damaged. But in the 40s, we're doing okay. I still have some new buds here, certainly some blooms. And of course, over time, we have talked about how much damage my cannas had sustained this year from the leaf rollers, the worms or caterpillars, whatever they are on them. And they're still doing okay. Our leaves are fine with no damage on them. Before we pass by all the cannas that I have, it's important to note that while the canna foliage may be okay with temperatures around 50 degrees or whatever, or tolerate slightly less before you really see that damage, we understand that one of the things that's going to happen is if we get prolonged temperatures that are 50 degrees or under, the canna's growth will slow. It's going to start going dormant. And so the foliage can't tolerate the cold temperatures. The roots, however, will survive in an area as long as the ground doesn't freeze. So here, my ground doesn't freeze. I don't dig up my canna roots at all, that sort of thing. The caladiums are going to be cared for along that same vein. So we have no damage on our foliage from temperature drops last night. But again, these are tropical style plants. So the caladiums are hardy zones 9 through 11, and they don't really love it. They're not thriving in the cold temperatures. So I have been on the fence about whether or not I would dig these up or try an experiment with leaving some in the ground. And I kind of thought I would do a half and half experiment. I'm not sure how much money I want to lose though if I leave them in the ground and they don't come back. These are not necessarily inexpensive in my opinion. So we'll see. We'll see. I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do. I will definitely be overwintering some of them in the greenhouse, but how many? Undecided. Banana trees. So my banana trees are not looking their best right now, and it's something we've talked about before, but this is not due to the cold, this is due to the wind. So if you get extensive wind force, the banana tree fronds, leaves, whatever, actually shred up like this, and once they shred, they turn yellow, then they turn brown, and you cut them off. So little by little, I've been cutting back the different fronds on the banana trees. So basically the banana trees, which are cold hardy, which means their roots will survive as perennials, their growth starts to slow down when we get below 50 degrees. Then at like 40 degrees, that's when you start to see damage on their leaves due to the cold. And 32 degrees is intolerable damage. 32 degrees is going to kill the foliage on the banana tree leaves completely. Again, roots survive, but you would have to cut everything back if you don't like the looks of it. Some people do wrap their trees to protect the leaves. I've seen a combination of things happen. So that's what we're dealing with the banana trees. And then the cordyline that I have only this year put in the ground for the first time to see how it will do. I just usually overwinter this pot. The cordyline, you know, when you read on Google, it tells me that the electric pink cordyline can tolerate 15-degree Fahrenheit temperatures. I have not seen evidence of that. I've had this plant for several years at this point, and the leaves get badly damaged under 40 degrees. So I'm not going to test it out and try to leave it out in the winter just to see what happens for fun. I instead like to enjoy the coloring on the foliage inside the greenhouse for the whole season. So that's with that. And the Purple Heart, really same deal. It's a perennial here in my area in zone 8, but all the foliage will die back completely. So a pot like this must be moved indoors in order to be protected so that I can enjoy it again next year. As I start walking to the next area I wanted to show you, I noticed this little guy. This is my Luna Rose perennial hibiscus that I haven't seen a bloom on in quite some time. So it's just really interesting to all of a sudden see a flower right there. So let me show you a few other things as we're making our journey to the next actual stop that I had for you. This is the oyster plant I've talked about before. It will also not tolerate cold temperatures. This one will be dug up and brought inside. The begonias I overwinter inside as well. No problem at all with them. This sago palm does stay in the ground, so it does come back perennial for me. I don't have tremendous growth on this one ever, but there it is. And here, this is right next to the oleander, where we basically started things off. I do have the tropical hibiscus plant that I had put into the ground. This is the only one that I have actually in my ground that stays perennial for me. But I do see that I have aphids on it. Not sure if you can see them on all these beautiful buds. Keeping the perennial, or I mean the tropical hibiscus in the ground as perennial, for me, just basically means that it's going to start coming out with its flowers a lot later than ones that I overwinter, certainly. Here's some great look at the aphids I have, if you can see that. Dawn dish soap and water coming its way, that's for sure. And I do have the Pineapple Express Mangave, my first year having that in here, so that looks good. Okay, now back to our regularly scheduled program. My gorgeous bougainvillea, which is another tropical plant, really does not like the cold temperatures. I mean, this is just the theme of all these things I have in my backyard that I enjoy all spring and summer, but it doesn't want the cold temperatures. And if it does get exposed to temperatures like under 40 degrees, we're going to start damaging the plant. And certainly it's not going to live through a frost. So once again, has to be something that gets brought indoors to overwinter, which I will do. I did it last year and it did continue to bloom inside the greenhouse as well. So that's just a delightful treat. The snake plant is something else. Now the snake plant most people use as a house plant, and we maybe just bring it out to enjoy the warmer temperatures of the summer and that sort of thing. So that's what I've done with this one here, and I have a hibiscus in here. These guys, even though they don't seem like a likely pair, they've been in this pot together for some time now, a couple of years, 3 years maybe, and they've done just fine. It probably is time to separate them now, but the snake plant, once again, just does not love these super cold temperatures. And actually, I think that one doesn't really want things below 50. So if he gets exposed to temperatures below 50 degrees over a period of time, that's going to be a problem for the snake plant. So once again, something you're going to be bringing indoors. I do overall feel like this was a very sad kind of video for me because I'm always enjoying these vibrant blooms. And of course, again, I have a lot of tropical babies here. And here I am checking to see if they're damaged because it's getting too cold. And then you just know dormancy is coming. It just feels, well, sad. I appreciate you watching and checking out my garden as it goes through all the journeys of the year and all the different work and effort we put into everything. It means a lot to have you along with me. Certainly the November garden tour is going to be a different one, isn't it? Well, thanks for sticking with me. I really appreciate it. And until next time, happy planting.